It's the end of the month. Rent's due next week, and you're not quite sure if you're going to make it. This is At the Root of Knowledge, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about personal finances.
Hello and welcome to At the Root of Knowledge, where we talk about timeless principles and try to apply them to modern problems. We talk about things like human nature and ongoing problems we face in life. I'm your host, Daniel Scheck, and with me is my co-host, Philip Rubarzik. Today we're going to be talking about personal finance. We're going to talk about why it's important, the issues that often come about from poor money handling, and the freedom you'll experience from handling money well. And we're going to use our experience and the experiences of others to try and explain how best to accomplish financial certainty, and try and help you all be better with your money and your finances. Please keep in mind that we're not experts, and just like many of you, we're here to learn. How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing well, Daniel. How about yourself?
Fantastic. I know I'm pumped to talk about money. It's something that I think about a lot, and it's one of the areas where I devote the most attention, and it's perhaps the most one of the most defined areas of my time. It's one of the most organized pieces of my life, and I'm not an expert. I wouldn't consider myself a financial guru. I certainly didn't go to school with it, but I think it is important, and I think good money handling and having a plan for your money gives you this sort of peace and relaxation that you can't describe until you feel like you're either at the point where you're handling your money properly or you're moving there. So I'm excited. Are you excited?
Yeah, I'm excited, a little nervous. I'm excited because I think this is a very relevant topic, not just to me, not just to you, but I think everybody has these financial struggles, or at least most people have financial struggles, and even if they don't have financial struggles, they still have to manage their finances. I don't think anyone's exempt from managing their money, at least in cultures where money is something that has to be managed. I'll put it that way. But I do think it's something that's relevant to a lot of groups of people, and it's not like it's only relevant to young people, only relevant to old people, or only relevant to middle-aged people. Everyone really has to worry about, well, I don't want to say worry, that implies
pay attention.
Yes, they must be conscious of what is going on in their finances.
Right. So,
although I want to put a disclaimer out as well that I am by no means a perfect example of what financial peace looks like, or what financial consciousness looks like. I have many flaws in this area, and it's something that I'm working on, and also hoping that I can pull something, at least something, hopefully more than one thing, from this talk.
And just to have full disclosure and to avoid any copyright, the term financial peace, I think, is a great term. It's not ours. That's one that Dave Ramsey coined. As far as I know, he's the one who coined that term. Yes, I
believe he has. There's also another podcast that's gotten a lot of attention over the past couple of years called Choose FI.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to get that out there. I've listened to them before, and they have kind of coined the term financial independence.
Okay.
So if I'm mentioning financial independence or Choose FI. They're another good resource as well.
All right. Well, to start off the discussion, I would like to talk about why. What makes money handling so important? Why should we care about it? Why is it something that needs attention and can't go, neglected?
Right. Why are my personal finances something that I need to pay attention to?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, that's a very valid question to ask. The first thing that comes to mind is being able to go on living and improving your life, almost as a way of preserving yourself. Being able to buy food. Like if you don't have money allocated to that, at least I've seen in some people that some people that I've even lived with has it's been to the point where they don't have their finances squared away and they can't afford to eat.
Right. Self-preservation, having a roof over your head, just being able to survive.
Right.
Being able to pay for the basic things, having water, running water, food, being able to stay warm in the wintertime. Very, very basic things.
Being able to rejuvenate yourself day by day so that you can continue to work and continue to make money.
Right.
To be capable of producing
yourself.
more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's a very good reason to pay attention to it, because there are people with not so great money habits that can still manage those basic things, though. So I think it's important to keep in mind that this is all, in a sense, on a spectrum. It's not like you're bad with money. You won't
be able to eat.
Right. You probably, most people, they got that instinctive, self-preservation where they would find a way to allocate money towards that. But right. I think that's definitely important and not something that very important. You got to be able to eat. I think another reason why it's important and why people should pay attention to it and put time and energy into handling their finances. It's like freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Having control of your money and being able to make your money do what you want, have a plan for your money and know what your money is going to be able to do for you now and in the future. It allows you to do things like decide to raise a family and educate your children.
Well,
great undertaking. Go ahead.
I see your point as freedom, but I see it as more of the choice for long-term freedom as opposed to short-term freedom. Like, so you can think of, if you want to go and have a credit card and you want to go and spend however much that your credit limit is, say that you can spend $20,000.
Right.
You can go out and spend $20,000 this weekend, even if you can't afford it. And you're going to have that freedom till next month when the bill's due.
Right.
Whereas if you plan for it, yes, you might have to sacrifice the initial freedom of spending $20,000 this week, but you have the longevity of freedom where you can spend that $20,000 over the next year, we'll say, on the things that you might like to get, like a TV, a new refrigerator, or a gas grill, just for instance.
Right.
That's the way I kind of see it, as it's the freedom that you gain there is a longevity, is over a long period of time, as opposed to just having the
availability.
right.
Right. Well, what I was trying to say is like you can pursue great things,
Yes.
with poor money handling you can't pursue. I mean,
Well, you can pursue.
You can pursue, but you won't
your
succeed.
Your probability of success is much lower.
Right. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, like if you want to, for example, raise a family, you want to start a charity foundation. Let's say you want to.
You want to buy a boat.
You want to buy a boat.
You want to retire and travel.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It gives you the freedom to do those things, the freedom to have hobbies, to
start a company or
right.
Whatever. I think another reason why it's important, and I feel like this gets overlooked quite often, is your ability to contribute. I think most people want to contribute.
Contribute in what way?
With money.
With money towards
your family.
Just in general.
Yeah.
It could be your family, your church, your
yes,
a charity organization, your community.
Yes.
Just in general, to be able to contribute money.
To be able to offer your money. I mean,
well, I don't think it's just money that you could offer though. If you you have the ability to be financially stable, you might be able to take, just for instance, you could take a week off of work and volunteer
to help,
which would be your time, not technically your money. So I would say that
it's not strictly
just being able
money.
to contribute to other things.
Yes.
Being able to serve,
if
you will.
Yeah, I think it's reason I think this is important. And yes, your point, right. It frees you up to contribute more when you have your money in order. And it's not just your money, as we'll talk about later. It applies to a much broader thing, but money's a integral and imperative piece of kind of everything that you focus your time on. But I think, for me at least, and I think it's true of most people, just from observation and reading and, education, I think you're not going to have a fulfilled life. It's not like you're not going to feel fulfilled unless you're in service to other people. I think it's part of our nature to serve something bigger than us and something outside of us. And I think that's what has inspired a lot of the people we look up to throughout history. I mean, many leaders in this country, sure, they wanted to live in a free country. They wanted to, but I think a lot of them were moved. People like George Washington and whoever, not to get political, but other political figures were moved to do what they did because they were serving a greater cause. I think that's why so many people want to go into the military. Maybe not all of them, but a good chunk of them, especially when the need arises to do things like that. I think that's imperative, I couldn't tell you how many mothers I know that work day in, day out. Fathers too, but with mothers it's particularly obvious, and in a lot of situations, these mothers have 8, 9, 10, 12 kids, so they're busy all the time. Maybe, 4 of them are graduated or 3 of them are graduated, whatever the case may be, and they'll still find time to go and volunteer at schools. They'll still find time to go and cook hours for our summer camp, the summer camp you and I went to. They'll still find time to go volunteer to clean up, to go help people, it says something about why it's important to be able to contribute, or how important contributing actually is to people. And those people that are contributing like that, many people have contributed to me in my life. It says something about the nature of people, and those are the people that I usually look up to the most, and those are the people that seem happiest, are the people that are giving everything away. Maybe not everything, quote unquote, but, all they have to give. Perfect example today. My fiance, Mary, she cut herself very, very bad. We talked about this. On a fence, yes. And I didn't even realize how bad the cut was until last night. How bad the cut was till last night when she asked me to clean it out for her, and I was like, oh, this is horrible. And it was we didn't get home till 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And I was like, we got to get that checked out. So I asked one of the nurses at school, and she said, sure. And a doctor who I barely know, Mary and I barely know, volunteered to take us to his house to stitch it up. And he ended up taking us to his office, and on a Sunday, he's got kids, and he was happy to do it. And that just, I could think of a million other examples like that. People going out of their way to help, and they're happy to do it. And those are the people I usually look up to. So I think money just helps facilitate that, because it's a lot easier to give when you don't feel like you're robbing yourself of your necessities. And poor money handling does that. So, yeah, being able to contribute is another important reason. And kind of going from that, feeling not like you're robbing yourself, poor money handling, it causes a lot of stress. I've been there before where I haven't taken the best care of my money, and I'm not sure if I can pay a bill next month. And that's, maybe you've been there where it's like, I'm going to have to figure out where this money's going to come from. Maybe you're like, I've got to ask a family member or somebody, or you feel like you got to rely on other people because, and it's horrible because it causes even more stress. It's like, if I would have just thought this out a little bit more and been more prepared, I wouldn't be in this situation where I feel like I have to come, begging for help, which, if that's what it takes, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with begging, but it's not something you want to plan for, as an adult living in the world, trying to sustain yourself as an independent individual. You don't want to have to rely on other people for money, for your necessities, You want to be able to be independent.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from there. Yes, I've been in similar situations where, money's been tight, and it is very stressful reaction that you have psychologically to it. And I mean, there's a lot of things that go along with having that stress.
Shout out to this doctor. Sorry, I gotta say, Andrew Lichter. He was the man. He was the absolute man. He dropped everything today. Sorry, I just gotta say it. If anybody's listening knows Andrew Lichter, thank you, Andrew. That was
for
very
helping
generous.
your fiance.
Yes, for helping my fiance with her hand.
Anyway, that stress can lead to a lot of health issues that I won't get into right now, but increased stress through financial instability can lead to a lot of health issues. And I don't remember the exact figure from Dave Ramsey, but I believe it's something like 70% of divorces are due to financial instability.
Right.
So I mean that's another thing that comes along with the stress of
And just to lump on top of that stress, owing money to people can wreck relationships. It can absolutely wreck relationships.
Yes. And it wrecks your ability to produce. Your drive, I'll say. Your motivation is affected so much by stress, especially when you feel like there's no way that you're going to be able to make enough money to pay the bill. Then it starts to really drain you physically and psychologically.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've never I've been in debt once. That was over a car, and I needed a car, and I borrowed money from a friend. I borrowed money from a friend, and well, he gave me the car. I told him, I'm like, we can wait till I have the money saved up. He's like, no, you need a car, and which was very, very nice of him. And he, very good guy. He gave me the car. He said, pay me back whenever you can. I'm not stressed out about it. And that was the only time I owed money. But more from looking at other people and seeing what it's done to other people, I've seen it really wreck people's lives. Owing money.
I think that comes back to the age-old idea. I believe this is stated in the Bible that the borrower is slave to the lender.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it just comes back to that as far as relationship goes. As much as both parties may try to hide it or try to not feel like they're being taken advantage of, in almost every instance I've seen, whether it was lending money to a friend or lending money to a family member, in any instance that I've seen, it most of the time it winds up, I would say 95% of the time, probably more, but at least 95% of the time it hurts the relationship. Yeah. And it starts out as something that's meant to be something done out of kindness.
Right.
Like I'm going to help you out by doing this. I'm going to help you out by lending you money so that you can be able to succeed. But it's not, that is either it's not communicated well enough through both parties, or they aren't able to succeed as well, or they just aren't responsible with it.
Right. If they're coming for you, asking for money, I mean, you gotta think, what is it? Somebody broke their leg and they can't pay the hospital bill. You think like, okay, well, maybe. But somebody can't pay their phone bill or food. It's like, well, their handling money put them in a point where they can't buy food. Do you think they're going to be able to buy food next week and still pay you back, If they're going to come to you asking for money. Stuff happens, you know what I mean? Like
emergencies happen.
Yeah, stuff happens. Somebody breaks their leg, and of course, like, not everybody has whatever $20,000, from a horrible to prepare for like a horrible injury to just pull out. Stuff does happen, but I think there are times when it's appropriate to. See, when the money leaves my pocket and it goes into someone else's, I consider it gone now. I've been burnt so many times loaning people money. It's like, if I'm giving that money away, I don't expect it back.
I have the same philosophy. In fact, I even avoid the term loan. When someone, if someone asks me for money, I will tell them, no, I won't lend you money, I will give it to you.
And a lot of times people feel bad about it, but it's like, hey, you want to pay me back, great, you know what I mean? that's on your conscience, and you know,
Right.
maybe you should.
I'm not going to think about it.
Right. It's not. It's I'm not going to be stressed out. I've already accepted that money is gone. Yeah, because I told you about that one time. Yeah. So don't loan money. Yeah. Don't. More often than not, general rule: don't count on the money coming back. Because I know I've told you. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast.
You have.
Have I mentioned that story? And that hurt me bad. But I got through it. I got over it. I was not right to lend them money out in the first place, though.
Right. Yeah, I think that really shows, like, especially in that story, like, what can happen. Like, that's the results you can expect from something like that.
I'll go ahead and I'll re-say the story in case anyone's listening.
Surmise it.
Yeah, I'll summarize the story. Someone needed money. I hung out with a lot. He needed money, and I gave him money. He wanted to get a new car. So I gave him money. I gave him $1,200, and I was about ready to go to school, just out of high school, and I was paying for school in cash. I got some help from my parents, but there's still a huge chunk of money I had to cover for the bill because I wasn't going to take any money out for it. And, I even wrote up a contract, and he agreed to pay me the money back by X date. And so I was counting on that money being back by X date because that was my tuition money. And the majority of the money never came back to me, and that was 3-4 years ago. And, I got hurt bad. I shouldn't have lent him that money, because I needed it for school. And that threw me short. That's pretty much the whole story.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that you learned and that can be learned from that story. So I think that's also just a good rule to follow in general. At least from my perspective. Yeah, I've had similar experiences where I've loaned money to people. But does that mean that all loans are bad?
No. I mean,
see, I don't think so either. I think it depends on your perspective on the loan. I know a lot of people can take the perspective that I'm getting free money. And it's that perspective until they have to pay it off, and then all of a sudden
then all of a sudden it's just this massive headache.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I ended up forgiving him the rest of that after years of feeling sour about it. Well, after I pretty much gave up on getting the money back after like 6 months after that, and finally I told him, I'm like, you're not going to pay me back, dude. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of reasons why it's important. There are a lot of reasons. You could talk about saving money for retirement, why that's important.
Oh, most definitely.
You could talk about why handling your money is important because it helps you develop self-discipline. It's a practice on self-control. And
I believe that you are very correct in saying that it helps with self-discipline so much. It just being able to write something, not necessarily write something, plan something. To be able to plan something out and follow it it helps immensely with self-discipline.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the opposite effect as well. If you write something or plan something out and don't follow it, it has the exact opposite effect.
Right.
You're less likely to be disciplined in anything you do, in your commitments to other people, in your commitments to yourself.
Right. You got to have discipline, some amount of discipline to handle money effectively long term. Yeah, I think that's very important. You can also talk about your example, why it's important for you to handle money. Well, maybe you've got kids that are going to have to live on their own one day.
And you're trying to teach them how to handle money, and
Yeah, given a good
especially
example.
if you are particularly well off, I would say it's extremely important then to be able to provide a good example for your children.
Yeah, and
to
show them
them
this
that,
money doesn't just come from nowhere. And
right. And I don't just spend it on anything I want.
Right.
Yeah, and then, I mean, you could talk about your, how it helps you to put things in order. How it helps you to put your life together.
Make a long-term plan.
Right. And we already touched on that a little bit with, having the freedom, long-term freedom. It just helps you to be able to have a long-term plan for yourself, have long-term goals that you know that you're capable of hitting.
Right. And it'll give you a reason. It'll, you can, if you're financially responsible, you can make a plan for yourself long term and know what you're capable of sustaining, paying for. You know how much money you're going to have to make between now and a certain time, and
yeah,
how much money you're going to have to save, and know that the money's going to be there for whatever, buy a house or car. I know most people think it's an insane idea to be able to pay for a house in cash, but it happens.
It does, and it's not just millionaires who
Right.
do it. But I think in the grand scheme of things, one of the, I won't say the one, but one of the biggest things that managing your money can do is to leave a legacy.
Right.
It leaves a legacy that you were, I'll say, rich. Even if it wasn't rich in quantity, but you were rich in you owned everything that you had, and you also were able to keep a decent sum of money, and you were able to live a decent life. And that will now be passed down to your children, who will hopefully, if they've learned everything that you've tried to teach them, will be able to do the same and increase in their fortune.
Right. Yeah. I think those are all important things. So kind of touched on this, but I'd like to go into detail a little bit further. What's it look like from an outside perspective or an inside perspective? But Chief, let's start with the outside perspective at least. What does it look like seeing someone poorly handle money? Like what does that entire thing kind of show up as? What are some of the attitudes you would expect to see?
The attitudes,
behaviors, and so forth.
I would say first and foremost desperate. Someone who does not have their finances well handled and under control, I would say, will tend to be more desperate, and that's a stress response. But that is one thing that tends to happen more often than not in people who don't manage their money. Another thing is impulsivity. Most of the time, people who are more impulsive tend to not handle their finances well, as you would expect.
Right.
As far as characteristics go, of what traits a person who doesn't handle money well would have. I would say the one big 5 trait that they would be very low in is conscientiousness, which has to do with people's ability to be aware of what's going on in their lives, whether they're getting on time, whether they're on time to work, or whether they're spending too much money.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one trait that you could practice, in being higher in. As far as what a real world example might look like, trying to think of a. Okay, so I had one friend who, I guess I kind of met him and his other friend as part of a group. So, and we all kind of hung out as a group for a period of months, I'd say. Anyway, he, for the most part, I would say, was rather impulsive with his money. It was work, 40 to 50 hours a week. And it wasn't like he wasn't a hard worker. He worked hard, but it was every weekend that it was just spend it all on drugs and spend it on partying and alcohol. And that's not to say that if you like to drink alcohol that you're not going to have good, you're not going to be good with your money. But I'm saying that he wasn't planning what to do with his money, and so every weekend it was just constantly making it and throwing it out, making it, throwing it out.
Yeah. Okay. I know someone who I got pretty close with, and this person moved back in with their parents, and they had they hard worker. They worked for, was 23, 24 years old at the time. She moved back in with her parents, and her bills were cut, considerably, because she wasn't paying for a house. She wasn't paying, to rent a house or to stay in an apartment. Her father was paying for a lot of the food, and so she had it a lot easier. And she worked still, and she was getting a lot of help, from the government for a lot of things because she was a mother. And she just wasn't playing. She was in a very bad spot a lot because she didn't have money saved up. She didn't, expect emergencies, plan for emergencies. And I don't want to go into details too much, but
I was gonna say that's one thing I also tried to save as much as I could in my story, was a lot of the details.
Anyways, this person ended up coming to me for money a lot, and she hard worker. It was just no focus with her money. And had she had focus, if she has focus now, you know what I mean? It's not like a past tense thing. It's an ongoing thing. I think she'd be able to, get a nice house that she could pay for, afford. But she was just really held back a lot by money handling.
Yeah. Yeah, that's most commonly what I've seen that people are held back by, is they continue to not pay attention to their finances. And because of it, I've seen people that won't leave a job that they hate because they can't, or they won't do it because their finances don't allow them to.
Right.
They don't have the amount saved up to where they could live without a job for a few months.
Yeah, a little bit of self-denial.
And
now.
we saw that this past year with all the stimulus checks.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a statistic from one of my brothers that said that, I believe he said 80%. 80% of adults in
Couldn't
the United
cover-
States couldn't cover a $500.
Yep, emergency.
Yes.
Which is a little bit of planning and self-discipline. I think that's another thing. People don't like to plan for things that aren't relevant now.
Well, I mean, you can get into the thought process that, but I could use it for this.
Right.
You know, I could save that $500, or I could use it to buy a new TV,
Right.
or I could use it to buy a new refrigerator.
Or it's something you can justify, you know, maybe buying these tools so I can do more stuff at work. Or right. Sometimes you got to spend money to make money. Like, money is, and this is kind of breaching into a topic we should probably talk about later. But yeah, I think a lot of it is you're not concerned about things that aren't relevant right now. Well, I have never had my house catch on fire or get flooded, so I don't need house insurance, you know. Or I'm not going to get injured, so I don't need health insurance, you know. Or whatever. Stuff's never going to go bad. Grocery stores not. I'm going to always have grocery stores, you know. I don't need to think about making my own food, you know. Whatever. A lot of people don't want to bother with things that, you know, take time to plan for emergencies. I think that is all the more true with money, because money's something that sooner or later you're most inevitably going to need to have more than you regularly make. It just happens, you know.
Yes. Yeah, it does happen, and most of the time it's without warning, I'd say.
Yeah.
Now there are times where you know something's coming. Like for instance, having tuition due.
Right.
You know that's coming. You know most of the time you know when the due date is. So you know when you have to have the money by. But I don't know that many people can relate to tuition dates. Obviously, there's a lot of
people that don't go to school.
People who don't go to school, or people who take out student loans.
Yeah.
But still, those student loan dates, you know when those are going to be due.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think an example would be, I think most people have relatives that live far away. I got 95% of my family, you know, 900 plus miles away. What if my grandpa, you know, well, both my grandparents passed away, unfortunately, but what if one of my aunts or uncles or cousins was on their deathbed, was in a car accident, and they're like, they only got 3 days to live. You know, you got to be able to afford. Wouldn't you want to hope that you had the money to go visit whoever, you know?
Right. Yeah, I see where you're coming from there.
Or, I mean, even something that's more simple, that's very, very highly relatable to probably anybody that's driven for more than 5 years. Your transmission breaks in your car, you know?
Right. Yeah.
You got to get to work still, you know?
Right. Most people get a rental.
Yeah. You still got to have money for the rental unless you're going to borrow that. Which is the culture.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on payment plans now.
Yeah, that's the culture is pay for it later.
Yeah.
Which I don't agree with, but
so
ahead.
we talked a lot about, you know, what it looks like when you don't have your money in order. So what does it look like when you do?
You're relaxed. You're not scrunched up.
You're not desperate.
You're not desperate. You're just you're relaxed.
As a matter of fact, you're more likely to be generous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's so much easier to give the money away, you know, or even something like, hey, we want to go to an amusement park. If you already got money set aside to go to an amusement park because you know it's okay to spend that much money, you feel perfectly fine spending that money. You know what I
right.
mean?
There's
Or
no
going
guilt.
skydiving.
There's no guilt that goes along with it.
Yes. It's like, no, this has already been planned. I've prioritized what's important, and I've already allowed myself this amount of money ahead of time. That's what I do. You know what I mean? Or somebody needs something, and give them money, or whatever,
Or
donate.
to be able to buy Christmas presents for people.
Yeah.
That's a major thing that I hear people talking about, how trying to manage money during the months coming up to Christmas, and then being able to afford to buy their kids Christmas presents or to buy their relatives Christmas presents.
Right. I mean, I've been very fortunate. Been extremely fortunate. I've always been able to find work. Always been able to find work. Even when I haven't had a job, I've always been able to find a way to make money, enough money to get by. I've been very lucky. A lot of people aren't in the same shoes as me. And we live in a country where we live in a country where you can find somewhere in this country if you got a marketable talent that people are willing to pay for, by and large. You know what I mean? If
Yes.
you have marketable skills, you can probably, I wouldn't say necessarily just one skill. If you got just one skill, and that skill, the demand drops for that one skill, okay, maybe, you're up a creek without a paddle. But, we live in a country where it's pretty easy to find work if you open your eyes and are willing to, eat a couple, turd sandwiches sometimes, if that's what it takes. But where was I going with this? Right. For me, that was just justifying my statement. I already figured out how much I was going to spend on Christmas presents at the beginning of the year. I already prioritized how much money I was going to make over this year, probably how many hours I would have to work to make that much money, even deciding how much money I wanted to make, how much money do I need to make to feel balanced? How much money am I going to have to make? How much does that come out to every month? How many hours do I work or not work to have that balance where I'm not giving my life away for money and I'm making enough money? You know what I mean? I figured all that out ahead of time. It's like, how much money am I spending on Christmas presents? That's already been settled. And I've saved every month for Christmas presents, you know? Because I trying to have the forethought to think in advance what's important and how important is it all, including my time. That's another thing. You got to factor time into, because for most people, you exchange time generally for money. Even in that, how much money are you going to make? How much money do you need to make? Like what's more important to you? Working 70 hours, saving 30 hours by only working 40, or having that house, or having that $30,000 down payment for a house, or having a new car, or whatever.
Right.
Trying to think of these things in advance so that you're ready when the time comes and you don't feel guilty or pinched. And for me, I'm not a money expert, okay? I'm not. I know people that I would consider money experts, but I feel happy with where my money's going. Like, I'm at peace. I don't, when I give money away, when I buy things, because it's already been allocated. The decision's already been made. And it's under refinement. It's not like as a set in stone thing. You grow. You're always relooking.
Right. You always you got to be you're willing to adapt to new scenarios.
It's your life.
That's something that I found out over this past summer, that I had to be willing to adapt to new scenarios. Taking on the bill of having to pay tuition.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I hadn't necessarily thought about that much, as I'll say, until probably the beginning of the summer. I mean, I had at least planned some of my budget around that. I had said, okay, I'm going to put this percentage aside, but I hadn't really necessarily said, okay, I need to put this percentage aside because in 6 months, if I put this percentage aside, making this much, I'm going to make the amount I need for my tuition.
Mm-hmm.
I had just said I'm going to put this much aside and then hopefully be able to make the difference.
Right.
And so there was a bit of a learning curve there, being able to, and sometimes it's really hard, especially if you have inconsistent pay.
Yep.
Sometimes you make,
You got to work around that.
right. Sometimes you can make 90% of what you thought you were going to make one week, and sometimes you'll make 170% of what you thought you were going to make.
Yep. Yeah, that's another element you got to work around. It does make more things more difficult, but it does not like it doesn't make it manageable. It just makes it harder to manage, in my opinion.
Right, and that's one thing that I'd like to emphasize is I don't want to sound like we're talking about managing money like it's something that's easy.
No,
It's definitely not easy, and I think that's self-evident in the amount of people that don't manage money and can't find that seem like they can't find a way to manage money.
Well, okay. It takes self-discipline and, some type of a plan, I think, to do it well.
Yes.
And so it's not easy. Well, I've seen a lot of these posts on Facebook. You can do this or you can do this. And one's like something good and something bad, and they're both difficult. In the end, they're both. So you say it's not easy. Well, the alternative isn't easy either. The poor money handling is not easy.
No, it's not.
You gotta pick.
But in the long term, poor money handling and good money handling, neither is easy. But in the short term, poor money handling is easier.
Right. Okay.
It's easier to blow your budget and be impulsive on something and go and buy something, especially, thinking about the current week. It's really easy to go and blow your budget on Black Friday because you can justify something as, I've been wanting this for so long and now it's a great deal.
Right.
So it's justifiable.
Right. Well, to not to say I agree with what you're saying. But I mean, if you've been through financial hardship, and felt bad about your money and you felt guilty about not handling your money better, and you've gone from that at some level and then decided to be more intentional with your money, after a few months, a year, you're going to look back and be like, man, I'm not going back to the way it was, because that it's not easy initially, because I think it's probably just because it's intimidating. I would say it actually is easier handling your money well. Like, sure, you got to let go of some impulses and stuff, and it can be intimidating at first. It shouldn't be. You realize pretty quick if you do start paying attention to your money, it's not as intimidating as you think. Within a few months, you're like, oh, okay. And then after a year, and you can see the potential that you've had and the things you've been able to do over that year. I think for most people, if they gave it an honest effort, and really tried to transform their attitude about their money, they wouldn't go back. The alternative would just. I've been there where it's like, I don't know how much money I'm gonna have, I don't, and then you don't know when you're spending your money if that's gonna hurt you, if you're gonna regret that later, and maybe you do regret that later. I think financial peace, I guess, that's like it I think it is easier. Not at first, but I think if you can think about the alternative and really think through what your money is, your time too, obviously, because you work for the money, you trade your time for the money, and you bring that all into perspective, it's a lot easier. And I think Dave Ramsey says baby steps. Yeah, small steps, It's not like you got to be a millionaire tomorrow. You don't have to. Your plan doesn't have to be grandiose. Your budget doesn't have to be completely all inclusive. First go, Start simple. I say start simple. And don't beat yourself up for needing to make adjustments. That's what the budget's there for. It's there to grow with you. It's there to reflect the life you want to live. So it's going to change. It's not like you get it right the first time. Don't beat yourself up, It doesn't have to be stressful. And that's the beauty of, I'll say a budget, is it takes the stress out. So we kind of already started to segue into this, but just to formally state, I'd like to talk about more of the how now. How do you get financial peace?
How do you make yourself financially stable?
Responsible, yeah.
How do you become financially independent?
Yes.
I think at least the first thing that you have to do is, it might be a group of events that have to happen, to make you realize that you need to become financially independent.
You have to recognize the need.
Right. Whether you've recognized that you need to become financially independent or that you want to become financially independent. So there's that, but I would say the first thing that to do is to plan.
Right.
That would be the first thing that I would think to do, would be plan what you're going to do about it. So
I went through the Dave Ramsey course.
Okay.
And I went through several Dave Ramsey courses. I went to 2 or 3 of them. And that's important, right? Okay, that's the start. I think even before that, you've really got... I highly recommend the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University, the Dave Ramsey courses. Is it everything you're going to need? Probably not. And that's kind of the point of it. And that's part of what he says. Is it perfect? Maybe not. But it's definitely a great place to start. And one thing I think Dave Ramsey does an amazing job of is he starts with kind of an eye-opening. You see where you're at, and you look at the habits you've done and where you've brought yourself in your life, and he kind of shows you there's a whole another side, and he opens you up to... I guess what I'm trying to say is start with the why. Why is it important? And I think the Financial Peace University does a great job of doing that, but there has to be that motivation. And he talks about money being a feeling thing. 100%. 100% feelings. Plan's important, right? The logic, the math behind making it all line up, very important. But the actual feeling the money. Feeling what that money means to you. And what you would like to accomplish with it. I think that's the important part to start before you make your plan, is to try and work on changing your attitude, or developing a lot of people, if you already have that perspective, I guess, but I recommend with trying to, examine where you are already with your money. Examine your money habits already. I recommend taking a course. If you're particularly bad with money especially, I recommend taking a course listening to what they have to say, try and digest. I'm sure there are other financial courses out there. Dave Ramsey's a very popular one, though. Listen to it, try and digest. A lot of the stuff's available online, too. What they're saying, and think about how much what they say applies to you. And try and recognize the things in your own life.
I think that's good. You make several very valid points, especially money being a feeling thing. I cannot remember the neuroscientist's name off the top of my head, but Simon Sinek in his book Start With Why talked about the decision-making area of the brain being controlled by emotions and not by logic.
Mm-hmm.
There's not, you can, that's why in some cases people will say, well, it feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they make their decisions based on. But when they say that here's all the numbers, here's what the numbers you're saying, something could still not feel right.
Right.
That's due to the emotional side of the brain.
Right.
So you do make a good point there. And I think that's a very good place to start, is to look at what you want to accomplish. And that's not unique to Dave Ramsey. Jordan Peterson in his self-authoring program, that's what this self-authoring program starts out with, is they ask you to write for, I'm not sure if it's 15 or 20 minutes, just describing what you would like your life to be like in 5 years.
Right.
And so I think that's just a healthy exercise to do, is to examine what you want to look like, what you want your life to be like, what you want your finances to be like in a certain time frame.
Right.
Within the next year, what would I like my finances to look like?
Right. And I think finances, kind of hitting on your point, they're just a piece. And if you want to do well with finances, I think if you want to do really well with finances, you're going to put that piece in perspective to the rest of your life. It's it's separate, but it's also integral to your life, your mission, your
Right.
purpose.
It's I mean, I would use a simile. Your life is like a puzzle, and you have all of these pieces. Say you're the centerpiece of your life, if you want to put it that way. And I don't
Your
mean that,
consciousness.
I don't mean that in a narcissistic way.
Mm-hmm.
I just mean that as in your consciousness, your experience of the world. That's the center of what you're seeing, what
Mm-hmm.
you're experiencing. So you have you, and then you have all of the people around you, and you have your experience.
Your influence on them.
Right. And then you have all of the things that contribute to you being able to have that experience.
Right.
And that can be like your outline of your puzzle. So there you have stuff like your job that enables you to make money, and your money enables you to have freedom and to be able to provide and to contribute and to have hobbies and go do things that you find entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So yeah, I would say, and that puzzle is your life. That's what you're putting together, and the financial aspect is just one that really is something that really comes to the forefront. If it's something that isn't in order, it definitely comes to the forefront. But really, there's anything that isn't in order comes to the forefront. If you have a marriage that's disorganized or on the verge of
collapse,
right, like that will come to the forefront,
right,
regardless of whether there's finances behind it or not. It will come to the forefront.
Right. Yeah, I think attitude's very important. I think attitude is examining your attitude about money and working to develop a better attitude. You need to be detached from your money and feel it at the same time, which sounds kind of counterintuitive. You got to be able to look at your money as a resource that has limits. And you've also got to be able to, but because it is a resource that has limits, just like you said, the decision part of your brain is guided by emotion. So you got to be able to feel it, because that emotional part is going to be what decides where your money goes in the moment.
Yeah.
So you've got to feel the money and align those feelings of your money with your long-term plan.
Right. And the only real way to do that effectively is to have your long-term plan something that's deeply meaningful.
Right.
Something
what
that
you want.
Yes. You want, but not just on a rational level, like I want to survive. I want to be trying to think of a good example for something that's like rational to want.
Drink beer on Friday nights.
Okay. Yeah. You can say that's a rational thing to want, especially if you belong to a social group that likes to do those things.
Yeah.
If that's what you like to do and you have a friend base that likes to do it, then it's a very rational thing to want.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it may not be something that you want emotionally.
Right.
Maybe instead of that, you really want to have a significant other that you can go out with on a date on Friday nights.
Right.
So I think you have to have something that it doesn't just make sense rationally.
Right.
It has to make sense.
There's a lot of
emotionally.
Right. I think there are a lot of allowances, and that's another thing. When you're talking about money, you want to be rational with your money, but you also want to allow yourself to have money that you can be quote unquote irrational with. Give yourself freedom. You know what I mean?
I don't know if irrational is
not
the right
irrational,
word. Maybe
not,
somewhat impulsive.
Yeah,
I guess. I don't mean somewhat impulsive as in the absolute first thing you see, just buy it.
Right.
I mean trying impulsive to say as in like. I think what you mean is not thinking constantly about your end game or your long-term goals.
Right.
More seeing like, this is something I would like within a short period of time.
Right. Like money to just spend. Like, hey, you know, you're not a slave to your money. That's not how it works. You're not going to, it probably won't keep working, and you almost definitely won't enjoy it if you feel like you're a slave to your money. Sometimes the need arises for you to work your butt off and sacrifice a lot to provide what you need to provide. But generally, you don't want to be a slave to your money. You know, you don't want to feel tied down by your money. It's not like all this budget thing is just work, you know, like it's all about having a house, okay? Like if that's your priority, you got to put those things in line, but at least for me, it's like no, I want to have $300 a month. I can just go drink beer on Friday nights or
go on a road trip every now.
Go on a road trip.
Take vacations.
Take a vacation, like whatever,
Right. Plan weekend get-togethers.
Yeah, have a party. Go out to eat. Pay for 6 of your friends to you gotta make these decisions for yourself, but maybe pay for 6 of your friends to go out to Red Lobster if that's what you really want, Have money to do that.
Right. Yeah, I think we pretty well covered, the personal aspects of finance. Obviously, there's a lot more that you can get into,
Right.
a lot of specifics in budget planning and such things, but I don't think that we're the best resource for that. I would say there's other resources out there, such as Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, he covers a lot. I mean, I kind of always had a lot of the same common sense stuff told to me growing up, but actually sitting down and taking the time. I took the course once or twice before I, because I was kind of forced to, for school. And then not that long ago, I was like, no, I want to sit down and dig into this. And it changed a lot about my perspective about money. Just taking a few months to really think about it, which I'll probably do again, hopefully, and just take a few months and just really examine what I want, and think about where I want to go and where I am right now and what needs to change to move me in that direction. Yeah, I do recommend taking a course. It's well worth the money. Even if you were to spend, $700, if you're willing to put the effort and the energy into, I don't think Dave Ramsey course is anywhere near that expensive. But even if it was, if you're willing to put the effort into applying the things you learn and actually try and learn the things and be humble about it, well worth it. Probably well worth $5,000, $10,000. Maybe for some people, maybe it's worth $20,000 because it'll change the rest of your life if you put yourself into it and apply yourself into learning the principles.
That could very well be. I mean, I know growing up, I would say I had a lot of vague advice given to me.
Don't spend it all in one place. Save some money for later.
Yes, yeah. Squirrel it away. And then when I would spend large sums of money, it would be, money's burning a hole in your pocket, which is all, I mean, they're all true sayings, but they're very vague.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think specifics are needed when you're dealing with money. At least for me, specifics help tremendously when dealing with money and looking at a budget. So, and it took me a long time to figure that out. And I did eventually figure out, okay, there's different ways you can break it down. You can break it down by percentages and amounts and all sorts of stuff like that. And so I think that just varies based on the individual, what you want to.
Yeah, there's a lot of different perspectives you could take. But
well,
there's certain limitations.
Yes, there are limitations, but those limitations are, if you're getting to those limitations, maybe go back to the basics, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's certain limitations, but there's an unlimited supply, which is your creativity and your ability to adapt and reprioritize. There's limitations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no matter what, you're probably going to have to pay something to live. You know what I mean? That's a limitation. You're always going to have to need that money.
Right. There's always going to be living expenses.
Right.
And there's always going to be emergencies.
Right. And you're going to have to pay to get somewhere one way or another. You're probably going to either have to pay for gas, pay for bus fare, whatever. There's certain limitations like that. Certain limitations like there's only so many hours you can work in a week. You can change that, you know what I mean? That's where the unlimited creativity and ability to reprioritize comes in. You can get creative with how you're going to make your money. You can go, I'm going to found a mobile maintenance, power equipment company, and I'm going to make this much money. There's limitations, your time, your ability as a human, but you can always replan. You can always readapt, and that's kind of like your unlimited resource, is your ability to adapt your vision for yourself, your ability to adapt your plan, your ability to adapt your priorities, your ability to adapt your time, the relationships you have. I mean, those can be insanely powerful, just the relationships you have as far as working and finding work or starting your own company or getting the right mentor to teach you the things you need to know to start your own company, to be a good father. I mean, it's so...
To be a good example.
Yeah.
There's numerous things that we could talk about.
Right, and
how
we're kind of talking about just money.
Right. But money is really affected by all those areas, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of times they're reflected in each other.
Yes. And most of the time that your life is your life is reflected in your money habits.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I learned a lot from this conversation we had, especially it's okay to go ahead and rethink things. Like a budget it's something that can change a lot, and
it should change. I think if it doesn't change, sorry, not to distract from your point, I think if it doesn't change, there's a problem. Like, you should be.
It's stagnant. Yes,
yeah.
I agree with that. It should be something that's flowing and that's constantly adapting to new things, especially if you're moving forward in life. If I just said that your budget is a reflection of your money habits, and your budget, they're a reflection of your life. So if your budget is stagnant, then you are stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
And being stagnant is not something that I would classify as
right. There's joy,
desirable to do.
There's joy in the journey. Like, we talk about budgets and financial peace and whatever. I think this is important, and this is just life in general. It's not like there's ever one point which, if you're a person that's been alive for some amount of time, deep down you probably know this, that you're never going to hit a point where it's like, I'm there now, I've accomplished it, we're good. No, because it keeps going, right? You keep living. And It's the same way with your money, with anything. It's the satisfaction doesn't come from getting to that point. That point is just a marker on the road. You can't think of it like, as soon as I buy a house and get married, I'm done. No, it's not like that. I think the fulfillment comes from moving in the direction that you want to go. The journey. It's having direction and moving. That's where the fulfillment comes from. And I think that's where the fulfillment comes with money. It's not, I've got $1 billion, I'm happy. It's, I am moving the way I want to move. I am on the right road. I think that's where the fulfillment comes from. But yeah, I think we talked about a lot of things. I reminded myself of a lot of things that I think about. I got a lot of things I got to learn. Definitely. There's so much stuff I don't know.
You and me both.
And investments, insurance, buying houses. There's a lot of stuff I know very little about. And there's a lot that goes into it. But I think this was a good conversation. I'm glad we had it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very happy to be a part of it. And I'm in the same boat with you. I got a lot of stuff to learn. Probably more stuff to learn than I know. But that's a good thing. That means that there's a lot of potential for me. So, well, thank you for having this conversation with me, Daniel.
Thank you, Phil. It was a pleasure, as always. And thank you all for listening. We appreciate any thoughts you guys would have on the show. Maybe we got something wrong. Let us know. Feel free to email us at therootofknowledge@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram or YouTube. Until next time, you guys have a great one. Bye.